Graham Weinberg to say a paragraph to Hill.
Mizmor David, Adonai ro'i lo echsar, Bino deshe yarbitzeni al mei menuchot yina aleini, Nafshi yeshovev yancheni l'magle tzedek l'man shemo, Gam ki elech v'geit al mavet lo yira ra ki ata yimadi, Shivtecha mishantecha hema yinachamuni, Taroch lefanai shulchan neged sorarai, Yishanta v'Hashem roshi kosiv rabaya, Ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yimei chayai, Yeshavti b'beit Adonai la'orech yamim.
Together to pay final respects to Yaakov Goldwasser, Yaakov Zeb, and Yehuda Meir. We feel, of course, the sorrow that people feel at any funeral, but of course we feel a much more unique level of sorrow with a life cut short at such a relatively young age. And it's very important, both in honor of the deceased, but certainly to give consolation to the family. For each and every one of us to be here. And it's important for us to reflect on who Yaakov was. And we'll begin with his sister, Chabel.
So much. It's so nice to see so many people. Okay, can everybody hear me? Okay. Welcome, dear family and friends. We are here today to honor and pay our final respects to my dear brother, Yaakov Goldwasser. Thank you all for coming. It really means so much to us. Yaakov passed away suddenly and unexpectedly in San Diego, California on Thursday, January 11th, which was 1 week ago today. Today also would have been his 39th birthday. During the past 7 days, there have been countless calls, emails, and text messages, so many text messages, and conference calls, feverishly working to make the necessary arrangements to bring Yaakov back home as quickly as possible. My mother, Ethel, also needed to fly back from London, where she had been visiting this past week. I would like to thank Rabbi Rosenbaum and Rabbi Weinberg, where is Rabbi Weinberg? Oh, there you are, for all of their support during this difficult time. Thank you also to Ema and my sisters Elisheva and Adina for helping make all of the necessary arrangements for this service. An extra special thank you, I cannot thank you enough, to Elisheva, who has done so much work on almost all of these arrangements, between dealing with the surprising bureaucracy of San Diego County, who would have thought, last-minute flight arrangements, and snowstorms, followed by last-minute flight cancellations. Thank you so much, Elisheva, for everything you've done. We all appreciate it very much. Yaakov struggled for many years with mental illness, specifically bipolar disorder. It gradually took over his life and at times caused huge rifts with his family, friends, and loved ones. But that's not how I choose to remember him. So let me tell you about the brother that I remember. Yaakov Goldwasser, his English name was James William, was born in Silver Spring, Maryland, to Ethel and Judah Goldwasser on January 18, 1985. He was sweet, sensitive, caring, inquisitive, and intelligent. He was also creative, impulsive, spontaneous, and unpredictable. And at times, he just drove me absolutely crazy. But as my mother recently said to me about Yaakov, he had a lev tov, a good heart. And everyone who knew him would agree. Yaakov attended high school at the Yeshiva of Greater Washington. He spent a semester in Israel studying at Bar Ilan University, and he received his Bachelor's of Science in Marketing from the University of Maryland Business School in 2008. He had a variety of different jobs over the years. He was a shuttle bus driver for the University of Maryland. He worked for an online retail company. He sold windows and siding and spent some time as a mortgage broker. He liked trying new things and meeting and talking to new people. In more recent years, he took to driving for delivery companies like Uber. He enjoyed the flexibility and the freedom it offered. The third of 4 children and the only boy, Elisheva and I could tell as soon as Yaakov arrived on the scene that our family was going to be so much more interesting with him around. And it sure was. While it's true that sisters always have a special bond, Yaakov and I were always very close. I have fond memories of going on long walks with him and just talking about anything and everything. I always felt like we were good friends. Growing up with Elisheva 3 years older and Adina 2 years younger, there was bound to be some bickering in the house. I remember whenever Elisheva and Yaakov would have a disagreement and start fighting, the house would get loud. They would start chasing each other all around the house, the main level, upstairs, downstairs, everywhere. And after a short while, they would forget how it all started. And it always ended up as a game of tag. And by the time they finished, they decided they were friends again. It happened every time. As for Adina, for a long while, Yaakov would always remind everyone that he really wanted a younger brother. Adina's attitude was he was stuck with her whether he liked it or not. As with Elisheva, Yaakov and Adina fought quite often as well. I don't remember as much running around, but it was still loud. Sometimes even right before bed. But after a while, it would get very quiet. Never a good thing. As an inquisitive older sister, I remember on more than one occasion following my parents to Yaakov's room, only to find that Yaakov and Adina not only stopped fighting, but they both ended up falling asleep next to each other. It was really very sweet. Yaakov was very curious and inquisitive. He was eager to explore and figure things out on his own. I will always remember the time when my parents bought him a new bed. There was a mattress with a box spring. Yaakov must have been 7 or 8 at the time. One afternoon, I happened to pass by his room, and I noticed that the box spring was torn. But it wasn't just torn. The whole length of the side was cut open. I remember feeling very concerned that my father was going to be absolutely livid when he saw what Yaakov had done to his brand new bed. But to my surprise, I was absolutely shocked when instead of getting upset, my father started laughing. He was so impressed that Yaakov was curious about what the inside of a box spring looked like that he just cut it open. I'm not sure I would have received the same reaction. Yaakov had a great smile. It was so natural and it lit up the room. Maybe that's why he made friends wherever he went. Even though he had many friends, he always treasured the time he spent with each and every one of them individually. He recognized that each person is unique and he wanted to connect with them on a personal level. When you were with Yaakov, you knew that you had his complete and total attention. Yaakov loved to travel. Of course, the usual Manhattan, Miami, and Israel, but he also wanted to go to new places where he had never been before. So he explored Nashville, Tennessee, Austin, Texas, the Ozarks in Missouri, the Bahamas, Italy, and England, just to name a few. He loved being near the beach, so in recent years he's spent a lot of time in Los Angeles and most recently San Diego. He loved going to visit our parents when they lived in London for, it was almost 5 years. He would go often, spend time for the Yom Tovim and the holidays. He met lots of new people there. He made some good friends, and he enjoyed spending time with our parents. In many ways, it became like a second home to him. I think often about the fact that he was visiting London when our father caught COVID in March of 2020, and he was able to be there with him right before my father passed away. It was actually the day before. I'm really glad that he had that time with Abba. Yaakov was often spontaneous and completely unpredictable. He loved going on walks, long walks. Sometimes they were very, very long walks. I remember one evening when my family and I still lived in Olney, it was just about 10 miles north of Silver Spring, there was a knock on the door. I remember specifically, it was Halloween night, and in most neighborhoods, not this one, a knock on the door usually means that some cute kids were coming in costumes hoping to get some treats. We had several cute visitors that evening, and just when I thought nobody else would stop by, there was one more knock at the door. When I opened the door, there was Yaakov, but without his car. I glanced over at the driveway and the street, but his car was nowhere in sight. I asked him, "Where's your car?" And he said, "It broke down," and he just started walking. And as he continued to walk, he realized he was heading in our direction, which was north. He said he was enjoying the beautiful weather and lost track of time. At some point, he realized that he was already halfway to my house. So he decided he could turn around and walk home, or he could just keep walking until he ended up at our front door. I think he probably walked about 10 miles that day. In my confusion, I completely forgot my manners, and I was just standing there, flabbergasted, in front of the door. After about a minute, he finally had to ask me, "Can I come in and sit down?" He stayed in our guest room that night, and we gave him a ride home the next morning. Yaakov and I always had a close relationship. I cherished the long phone conversations we often had, even though they were not as frequent in recent years. It was always good to talk to him and hear his voice. I always gave him the space that he needed, and he knew that he could call me anytime if he ever needed to talk. He recently got back in touch with me, well, all of us, a couple months ago, and he started calling. And he started calling me almost every single day. I was so glad to hear from him. He told me about the beautiful sunshine and also about his struggles and his fears. I would listen and I would give him encouragement. After every phone call, I would always end by saying, "Yaakov, I'm so glad you called. It was really good to talk to you. You can call me anytime." He really appreciated it when I said that. I was always there for him, and he knew it. Yaakov, I will always choose to remember your sweet and caring voice. I will always choose to remember how your natural smile and gentle laugh could just make it everything better in an instant. I will always choose to remember the genuine and special bond that we shared. I will always choose to remember my brother, my friend, my dear, dear Yaakov. Yaakov, I love you, and I miss you now and forever. Thank you.
Here from two friends of Yaakov, first Jeffrey Summers.
I am positively speechless. I've been doing a lot of thinking over the past few days. I learned of his Yaakov's passing. Just thinking back over my very long history with him. He and I were best friends. My best friend. But everybody's best friend. But when it was way back, I guess maybe I was 3 years old. My mom but we ended up going over to his house and ended up being a great friend. I kept coming over and talking to him and spending time. And we started doing everything together. bicycling, swimming, ice skating, movies. We went to the movies so many times. We would spend many hours just in front of the radio, just listening to music or record players. And I spent so many hours at his house. Sure, his family very aware of how involved, Yaakov and I were together as friends. Yaakov was love. It still feels like I must be dreaming. Yaakov was always very focused on what he could do together with others. We would spend, we always sought to try to include his friends in pretty much in everything. Whether it was from driver's ed, I remember he had arranged for us to, get driver's ed together. When he got his, I grew up with a cat, and he got his cat. I think the cat's name was Kirby. And we would talk about cats. I remember this time he wrote a movie script. He was going to make a movie with me and some of his friends. We were going to make a movie. And I was, and he had the whole thing planned out from beginning to end. I remember we went to camp together. And it would be remiss if I didn't say how many hours and hours we played Power Rangers. Absolutely, so many hours. When we started off at different schools, actually, and as time went on, we started to get even closer. I remember it was, I guess, maybe 30 years ago when charter school first opened. And when, as soon as it opened, and I started going, Yaakov came along. I realized something very different at that moment when he started going to the same school as me, which was that, he wasn't just my friends. He was very good friends with everybody. He was very cordial, he had a very distinct laugh. Remember there was this time where we recorded, we were going to make our own voice recordings. Spent hours in front of a cassette tape, recording all kinds of stuff. Over the years, I've looked for those tapes, but I haven't been able to find them. But I do remember very fondly, the times that we would spend together doing that. When we finally left, we left charter school, we both went to the yeshiva together. And he was very involved with the school and student council. He managed the candy machine. And but he's just, wherever I went, he was always involved doing something. And it really just struck me just how much of an impact he had on everybody. I remember he wrote, it was really sweet. He wrote a blurb for my yearbook and we swapped. So we wrote these long blurbs about each other, and it really struck, how he viewed me. As a really, really good friend. I remember we graduated from high school. Remember I was Dr. Lawson took us. We went onto a plane together to go to New York for a few hours and flew back. It was, he would try to get me to be there with everything that he wanted to try to do. We even were going to go to the same college together. We're going to go to UMBC. When he graduated, I remember the day of orientation, he was there, and then afterwards he just swapped last minute, go to a different school to follow perfectly. And then I spent a few years in Israel, and he and I lost touch. He was very hard to get a hold of, and he was never in the same place at a given time. He would always be somewhere else, and so I happened to have, many years later, so I guess maybe it was like 4 years ago, 5 years ago. He and I, he got together with me at my house, and he really wanted to watch Power Rangers the movie. So we watched it together. It felt a lot like old times when we would do things together. And I always thought that we would, be together, growing older together, doing things together. We'd always talk about the future. Yaakov's birthday is today. And he and I would have this running thing where there are 2 days of the year that he and I are the same age. My birthday's in 2 days. And so, this would have been the first day that he would have been 39 together along with me. And it was just such a simple thing that I would always be able to try to reach him, on his birthday. He would always try to reach me, and it didn't matter where he was. Sometimes across the country. And then when I got the news, it's just I'm still not sure how to process it. What I do know is that he really, really, not that he was just my friend, he was everybody's friend, but he was very caring, thoughtful about the things that he was going to do with his family, and he spoke very highly of everybody, even though sometimes he did get into fights. But he was truly a really special person, very special friend, and I've had so many memories. I didn't even realize how many memories I had of him until I really started thinking about it. It's really been it was really, I really had, it was an amazing time together, and forever, it is, actually, he's okay, but for the families and friends and everybody else that's here, it's a loss. big loss. And I'm going to really miss him. And I'm going to, try to spend more time thinking about different things that he had done for me and different things that we had done together and what would he want. I really want to make sure that I keep his memory alive. So I'm sorry for the family. I understand it's really it's a huge loss. I don't even know how to end this speech. And all I had was just a bunch of thoughts on paper because I didn't prepare the whole several 7 pages or anything like that. I'm Yaakov, I'm really gonna miss you. Very early.
I've known Yaakov pretty much my whole life. From when, at the time I was in elementary school, I have strong memories of just hanging out with him, with Yaakov in Woodside, at his house, at the park, at Shul, my house. I was a regular at his house, he was a regular at my house. I knew his home phone number by heart, 565-3026. Yeah, still do. Okay. Yaakov and I would frequently explore an adventure on our bikes. So many memories of just hopping on my bike with Yaakov and just riding into it. We rarely went the same way twice. And there was always a sense of freedom, curiosity, spontaneity. You never knew how it was going to end. We bike around exploring either unfamiliar neighborhoods, streets, paths we hadn't seen before. As we got a little older, we started doing bike paths to Chevy Chase, Bethesda, Rock Creek Trail, anywhere we could reach. Matinee at the Flower Theater. During the summers in college, we would bike all the way to Georgetown, Thompson's Boathouse, go on boating on the Potomac River, canoeing for an hour or two, and then bike home. That was his idea of a full body workout. And similar memories of hanging out with Yaakov feel like a collection of adventures. Some adventures were planned. We go to Six Flags, New York City, we go to concert. Some adventures were less planned, but definitely not boring. And sometimes hanging out required no plans at all. Sometimes just go for a drive with the top down, of course, it's good music. Or we could just find somewhere to sit around, hang out. In the college years and later, sometimes it's just chess and beer. But so I find somewhere to sit and talk, and we could sit around and talk for hours, discussing, wondering about things that were bigger than us, talking about music, talking about future plans, who knows what. Because Yaakov was filled with wonder and amazement and curiosity. And when I would hang out with him, I felt like we both talked and we both listened. Yaakov was interested in what I had to say and would consider my points rather than just wait for his turn to speak or make his point. Yaakov was always a thinker, and he valued the dialogue and debate with friends, though ultimately it was very hard to convince Yaakov to do or not to do something once his mind was set on something. Yaakov had very strong convictions. A few months ago, in the lead up to the rally in DC for Israel, I reflected on the last major DC rally for Israel, which was in 2002, when we were both in high school. Because I had a very strong memory of Yaakov then. We were both in high school. The place we attended high school was unsure leading up to it if they were going to, as a school, attend the rally. And this was something that was very strong for Yaakov, that he had this very, very strong feeling like, I have to be there. I have to stand. This is something like I really feel like I have to show solidarity. I have to be a person in that crowd. So we ended up, we left school, took the metro with parental approval, and we went to be there. And I remember Yaakov really being the kind of like a drive on that, of being like all these schools are coming in. We didn't like there's so many people going to be there. Like, how can I not be a part of this? How can I not stand for something that is important? And when he thought something was really important, he went ahead and did it. It didn't matter what other people were doing or what other people, that was Yaakov always. He was always kind of genuine in that way, where what he thought and what he felt and what he believed was like the same with everyone. He doesn't like that when he was hanging out with me, he would say things that he wouldn't say to another friend. It was always, and he had conviction with a lot of these kinds of things. I remember that very strongly. During the last 10 to 15 years or so, and so anytime I visited in Maryland, I would sometimes get Yaakov would show up at my parents' house, or he would just give me a call and say, hey, come meet me, we'll hang out, go play a game of pool, something. And but in the last 10 to 15 years, so I saw him with a little less regularity. My visits to Maryland were less frequent. I saw him a little bit less, but it didn't matter like how much time had passed since I saw him last. Like I would always feel like it didn't matter about the time. Like it was less about reunion and catch up and more about just spending time with a good friend. And he really was a good friend, and he cared. I remember when I saw him first, I think it was after I was engaged, and I first saw him, and he was just so happy. He had such a big smile. He would say, I frequently remember him saying, I'm so happy for you, just in general. Like when I would tell him something that happened or something that's going on, or where are you working, or what are you doing? And then he'd be like, that sounds great. I'm so happy for you. And he was just happy, excited, and he really wanted to meet. He wanted to meet my wife. He's like, I just want to meet her. I just need to know, he was excited, not just about meeting people, but it was because it was important, and it felt important to him, and it felt special to him. He was always interested to hear about my family, my kids, my work. He was always happy for me, truly interested, genuinely happy for me, positive, genuine, and always a good friend. It feels impossible that he won't show up at my parents' house when I'm in town, or call me to tell him to meet him on Saturday night, somewhere, anywhere. Yaakov, I'm so sad that I won't get a chance to hang out with you again. And feel the warmth of your genuine smile and your infectious laugh. I miss you already.
Yaakov's uncle, Joseph Adele.
Good morning. I'm Yaakov's uncle, Joseph Adele from Toronto. And although I have memories of Yaakov, my own memories, I stand before you today to deliver words of tribute written by Yaakov's friend, Mark Joseph of London, England. So imagine this speech being delivered in a heavy English accent. When you add up all the time that I physically spent with Yaakov, it probably amounts to no more than 3 weeks in our lives. But the time we spent together was so rich, so much fun, so spiritually and mentally stimulating and nourishing, that it felt like we had known each other for a lifetime. Like we were brothers, the brothers we never had. We recognized in each other vulnerability and an acknowledgement that being human was exceedingly difficult sometimes, and it was often a challenge to navigate through. I remember having deep conversations with Yaakov about psychology, spirituality, Judaism, and the workings of the mind. My fondest memory of Yaakov comes from a 2-week period that we spent together when he had come to the UK to visit his mother and father in London. This was a couple of years before COVID, and one night stands out in particular. It was one of the first full evenings in London on this 2-week visit. I remember Yaakov being excited to be in the UK, and he could not wait for me to take him out on the town. He wanted to see everything and go everywhere, and he enthusiastically assigned me to be his tour guide. That first night we walked and walked, talked and talked up and down the streets of London. I remember we were crossing one of the famous bridges over the River Thames and looking out across the skyline, all lit up, and he looked so happy and excited to be here. I recall now that he said that this was the highlight of his trip. Along the way, we happened to pass by the world-famous Ritz-Carlton, world-famous Ritz Hotel on Piccadilly, London's West End. I'd always wanted to see the inside of this exclusive hotel and mentioned this to Yaakov, who excitedly decided that we should just walk in and explore it. I told him that no one was allowed in unless they had booked months in advance, or indeed unless they were a guest. But like two naughty boys and so high on life and excited about everything, we decided to do it anyway, and somehow we managed to get past security by convincing them, or so we thought, that we were paying guests. The adventure took us into the stately rooms and corridors of this world-famous hotel. I recall we managed to get up to the upper floors and then ended up outside a royal suite when we heard some noises coming up the stairs. It sounded ominous, and as we turned around, we saw a security officer glaring at us on his phone saying, "We found them." I guess we hadn't fooled anyone. The security guard inquired as to what we were doing there. We both stared back at him in shock and silence like naughty school children, at which point we were promptly escorted off the premises and thrown out into the bustle of the West End night. That was also the evening when Yaakov insisted that we find a fountain. He really wanted to see fountains. After wandering around for ages, talking about life, relationships, and dreams for the future, we eventually stumbled across a park in which there were some fountains hidden away on the lake, behind some trees and fences and bushes and undergrowth. We didn't hesitate to trespass and get up close and personal at the water's edge. I have to say, I was starting to feel 21 again, even though I was more than twice that age. I don't remember too much detail about those 2 weeks, but we saw musicals, went to restaurants, and so much more. I remember that he did not want to leave the UK and was struggling with the decision to either get on the plane and fly home or somehow find a way to stay in London. Looking back, I think he perhaps found a brief escape from the shackles of his mind in that fortnight. He could breathe a little bit and enjoy himself and forget about his challenges. One night, maybe it was even that same night, I remember we were walking around. It was very late and there was no one around, no one about, just empty streets and lamplight. I decided to sing a song aloud to him. Being the husband of the New West End Synagogue, a member of the choir, and a former London theater performer, singing is just what I do. I do not really know why I chose this song, but one thing about our connection at that time made me share it with Yaakov. It was a song about being free, about letting go and not being afraid of connection, and about feeling safe. I wanted to finish this eulogy with the lyrics of the song. I remember Yaakov being quite taken with it at the time. Anyone can whistle. That's what they say. Easy. Anyone can whistle. Any old day. Easy. It's also simple. Relax, let go, let fly. So someone tell me, why can't I? I can dance a tango. I can read Greek. Easy. I can slay a dragon any old week. Easy. What's hard is simple. What's natural comes hard. Maybe you could show me how to let go. Lower my guard. Learn to be free. Maybe if you'd whistle for me. I sense that Yaakov struggled in so many areas of his life and put so much pressure on himself to work it all out, to be super successful in work, and to find meaningful relationships. To me, he seemed to be a profound thinker, with a great intellect and a desire to find some peace and serenity. I think in the times we spent together, he maybe had moments of this, and I am honored and grateful that I got to see the beautiful soul in this beautiful man. I love you, my friend, Mark.
Last week's parsha, Torah explains that there was a point in time when the Jewish people were not ready to accept Moshe Rabbeinu's plan and urgings that they would be leaving the land of Egypt, which is difficult to understand because when Moshe first came to them, they were ready, they were excited. In the Torah, at the beginning of last week's parsha, it says, "V'lo shamu Moshe mikotzer ruach me'avodah kasha." They didn't listen to Moshe out of a narrowness of spirit and hard work. What exactly those phrases mean is a discussion among the commentaries. But I want to share with you what Ramban says on that pasuk. Ramban says, Jewish people in their hearts wanted to leave Mitzrayim. The Jewish people in their hearts wanted to go with Moshe, and the Jewish people in their hearts were absolutely ready to believe him. But there were difficulties. The difficulties were the kotzer ruach, the duresses, the stresses, and the hard work in which they were under. And I just think that it's an interesting amount to reflect on when you think about Yaakov Goldwasser, Yaakov Zevin, the mayor. We've heard today how very, very beautiful his heart was, how beautiful his connections to people were, how much he thought about what it is to be in this world. Again, to repeat what his mother said, Lev Tov. And it's a tragedy to not have him with us longer. And it's a tragedy that there were obstacles that stopped him from accessing that beautiful heart and sharing it with more of us for a longer time. Just on behalf of community, on behalf of all the people here, all the people virtually with us, all the people with us in spirit, I want to ask Yaakov Mechila, if any of us didn't do what we could have better to help you bring out that beautiful heart. Please rise for a kill. Yomolei Rachamim, Shofei Baruchim, Amtzeim Lukono, Amtei Ashkina, Malos Kedoshim Utovim, Zorakim Maskim Esmas, Yaakov Zev ben Yehuda Meir Sholach Liolamo. Bavur Shanach Mispallim Bias Paras Nishmaso. Began Eden to Emunah Chaso. Lachem Balarachamim Yasti Rehu B'Seiser Knafal Liolamim. Yitzror Tzvarat Hayim Es Nishmaso. Adonai Yunach Laso. Bianuach B'Shalom Al Mishtavo B'Nomar Amen.
Amen.
That concludes this portion of the service. Burial will be at Garden of Remembrance. We'll all escort Yaakov out. We'll have the ability to follow to the hearse, and then we can all follow by foot slowly up the hill. Once the hearse stops at the top of the hill, those who plan on coming along to the cemetery should please get in their cars and line up behind the hearse. Shiva will be observed beginning this afternoon, evening, through Tuesday night at the Elbaum home, 11709 Walk Lane. It's only going to be Mincha and Marav services in terms of tefillos, and the first Mincha and Marav will be tonight at the Elbaum home at 5 p.m. If the pallbearers would please come forward. Yoshe, to say so, Yoshe, I guess, no, I don't know, I'm asking you to yellow. I have that phone. Yatzio coming back, your push me never abos, and Russell Yosef law, which I has to context that. See them for them, Tobos, you got me at the place law. If they don't want me to ever vote from Yabo, because the judge is so short there. Keep all the kids there.